Hello, everyone. Welcome to this mental health town hall, brought to you by Silicon Slopes and Promise to Live, and sponsored by LEVO, a mind care company today. Thank you so much for coming. We love holding these and talking about mental health issues, providing solutions to you. Everyone either has a mental health issue or has a first-degree connection with someone who has a mental health issue anymore. It's just the way it is now in the 21st century. So we're happy to be part of that solution. I am Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. So today, we are going to talk about the relationship between physical activity and mental health. The reason I like this topic is because in the United States, I don't know if you know this, but almost 50% of people in the US will be diagnosed with a mental health condition at some time in their life. And the reason I've underlined and italicized diagnosed is because to be diagnosed with a mental health condition is a second step than just having a mental health condition, right? So this is just people that we know who have gone in and talked to a professional and have received a mental health diagnosis, not to mention everyone out there who's struggling with something who's never been diagnosed, right? So you could probably take that number and add maybe 25% to it, even more, that we're all going to struggle with mental health issues and sometimes serious mental health issues over the course of our life. So the question is, what do we do about it? I think for a very long time, people have been frustrated because there's a lot of false assumptions out there about there's nothing I can do about it or I can't afford treatment. When we talk about physical activity, there's things you can do when you move your body that are automatically going to help your mental health. So let's talk about a few of those before we introduce our panel. So some of the effects of exercise, and I just listed depression and anxiety because those are by far the two most common mental health issues that are diagnosed in our society. You get endorphins. You feel like that. Who's exercised? You know what I'm feeling like. You know what it feels like, right? Temporarily, then you hurt after that. But it feels better. You feel better. There's a distraction that can happen from negative thoughts during that period of time. And this is the one I want to talk about just briefly. Increase in feelings of self-efficacy, which just means feeling that you're more capable, that you can do something about your situation. When we exercise, it makes us feel stronger. It makes us feel like I did that, when you accomplish something. I have exercise routines I do regularly on Apple Fitness. Indoor cycling is what I love to do. And they always say you got to make it the whole 45 minutes. The coach is telling you, keep going, keep going. And when I make the whole 45 minutes, I feel good. I feel like I did something today about that. So let's talk about the little engine that could. Anyone old enough for me? Remember that? Okay, thank you, Curtis. Thank you. It's an old fable, and it's about this train that's coming in with all these, in this case, it pictures a circus. Sometimes it has toys in it, and it's pulled by a large locomotive because it's a very heavy train. Well, the locomotive poops out and can't do anymore, and it's right before a hill. And so as the story goes, the operators are looking around for another locomotive to pull this train. And all the rest of the large locomotives say, I can't do it. They have all their excuses about why they can't pull the train. I'm too sick, I'm too tired, that train's too small for me, any number of things. But then the little engine says, well, I'm going to try. I'm going to do it. So as he's going up the hill, we don't have a gender, so I'm going to make her a she. As she's going up the hill, she keeps saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, right? As she's going up the hill very, very, very slowly. And then when she finally crests the top of the hill and comes over the other side, she says, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could, as she ends down there. Because she did the difficult thing, it enabled her to get some confidence in herself. And physical exercise is something that's very, very simple, not easy, but simple, that we can do that can give us a measure of confidence. So here's kind of the succession and how that works. When you successfully do something difficult, physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is, then you feel more capable about yourself. You say, look at what I just did, which improves your confidence, which then can lead to less anxiety and depression. It's a simple, simple process. There's so many things that we can do, and anyone has access to physical exercise, right? You can go out and take a walk tonight. You don't have to have insurance. You don't have to have good shoes. You can just do it tonight, right? You can get your heart beating. You can get your endorphins going. Anyone can do that. So I love that we're talking about this today, and really grateful to our panel to discuss this. At Silicon Slopes, some of our mental health resources that we offer are these monthly town halls. We're so grateful to Promise to Live to organize these. We have a podcast called the Mental Health Momentum Podcast that I host, and we should be releasing the first episode here in just a couple weeks. We've been interviewing for the last few months, and I think it's going to be great. If you have questions, that email goes directly to me, mentalhealth@siliconslopes.com, and I'm happy to answer those. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Crawford, who's going to introduce Promise to Live and the rest of our guests. Thanks again for coming.
Is this on? So, most of you know Brandy. None of you know me. And is this better? Okay. And this was the most colorful jacket I could find. And somebody said, well, I can go get one of Brandy's jackets. But this is what you got. So we welcome you here. This is a great topic. We have a great panel. A couple of people said to me, I'm anxious to hear you speak. My shortest speeches are an hour and a half, so I'm passing today. But on this topic, your physical health is a pathway or a doorway or a gateway to your mental health. And so I just invite you, as we go through this, to just consider this, and if you have a piece of paper, make some notes. Like, you can't give anyone else a drink from an empty cup. And you can't give yourself a drink from an empty cup. And for today, I'm going to propose to you that taking care of this instrument, this body that we have, is how we begin to fill our cup. And it's with that energy that's in our cup that we can do great things. And so we can do great things for ourselves, and we can do great things for other people. But if we're empty, then we're in deficit. And so we're going to have some great speakers today. We'll talk about Promise to Live at the end. I encourage you to get your phones out if you haven't made the promise. Click on the QR code now. Make the promise. It'll take you 20 seconds, which is a promise that when you're in that spot where things feel like they're going downhill or dark or lonely, that you'll promise to yourself to get whatever resource it needs. And I promise you have all of the power and resource inside you to get whatever help that you need. So go promise yourself to go find it. And what we're going to talk about today may be where that last drop is that allows you to go get the help and support you or someone that you needs. So with that, let me just introduce the panel. I'll give you this because I don't have a slide.
Now, hearing you talk, I don't know if I'm going to use mine either.
Well, so we're going to hear in this order. We're going to hear from Rob Eastman. He's the owner of Empower Fitness and Wellness. We're going to hear from Brandon Condie, a mental and behavioral health practitioner. And they didn't give me a name of who, so or is that a top secret thing you're going to reveal?
My practice?
Yeah.
Yeah, clear counseling, consulting.
Okay. And then we're going to hear from Andrea Beckstrom, and she's the medical director at LEVO, our sponsor. And then Brent Esplin, the executive director at Oasis. And then we'll wrap up. If you have questions, write them down, because I'm going to make just a little time at the end where we can have a conversation about what we talk about today. So we're not just going to cut that off. We're going to give you a chance to ask questions or share your experiences. So here we go.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here today. And when Brandy reached out and said, hey, I want you to come speak about mental health and fitness, that's been my entire life. I struggled very young age. Before I got to school, I could run around and climb in the trees and climb up the walls at my house. And when I got to school, I found out that that wasn't normal. I was ADHD. They wanted to hold me back. And all the things that I loved most, which was moving, now became bad. So once I got on a soccer field, I was great. And I loved it. Get off, getting in trouble. And fitness and moving my body, that was the only thing that could quiet the energy inside of me. Got bullied a lot, red hair, big ears, moving into junior high. I wanted to be strong. So what came with that, it was either I could run from all my emotions all the time, or I could learn how to stand and fight. And one of those things was learning how to wrestle. I wrestled the 78-pound weight class, but I weighed 70 pounds. Needless to say, I was teeny, and that was amazing for me. And I took second place my first year at the highest level in that. And it almost became an addiction in the sense that everybody loved me when I was on the soccer field, basketball court, wrestling mat, but that didn't transfer into the hallways. It turned, so I'm like, okay, if I do this, I'm going to get the attention. Fast forward, getting into high school, found out I grew up without grandparents, and I didn't know really even what that was, and that's when my parents first let us know that my grandmother had died by suicide. And I had suicidal thoughts from the age of 9. I knew that I was a bother to everybody, that it would just be better if I wasn't around. I didn't think about hurting myself. I just knew that I didn't want to be around, and that progressed over the time. And growing up in a religious setting where numbing out on things wasn't okay, and seeing the pain in my dad's eyes when he talked about his mother passing, I was like, I don't know where to go from here. I can only play so much soccer. I can only lift so many weights, and it was just like, man, I don't know what to do. So I fell up, and I got into drugs and alcohol. I was a high-level soccer player. I had D1 scholarships as a junior in high school, and then getting out of that, I had my best friend who died by suicide, and all of the world was just crashing down around me. And I'm going to fast forward to 31 years old. From 19 to 31, I messed up in a lot of ways. And when you start feeling down, depressed, anxious, all those things, you stop doing the things you love. And that was one of them. I didn't have the energy to get up and go to the mountains. I didn't have the energy to get up and go play soccer. I felt less than. I was hard keeping a job, all these different things. And in 2009, my daughter was born, and I knew that I had to make some changes. And for me, that meant me not being here. So I took my last journey. I went and I hugged my daughter. She was 7 months old. Went and gave my mom and dad a hug, and I was going to plan on not being there the next day. And I went up above the Bountiful Temple and sat there and said one more prayer, and I got a really loud answer. And went home, drove myself to the hospital, checked in, went to rehab for the last time. And when I got out, I got 3 really, really hard challenges. My wife at the time waited till I got out of rehab to let me know that we were divorced. The bank came and took everything I owned. And then at 9 months sober, my dad passed away on the side of the road from diabetes. So I'm sitting there in my own mental health and my own mental struggles. I've got this new bag of tools that I learned in rehab. And so I started running again. 4 days after my dad's passed away. I'm sure you guys have heard of Ragnar. It's a relay race that everybody has in Utah where you go out and you run 3 different legs. And one of my legs was around Echo Reservoir at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was raining. And I'm bawling. I'm just like, man, I don't want to be here. My family bullied me into it, like, your dad would want you to do it. And I'm just like, well, where are you guys? Let's go. So as I'm running, I'm just crying, and I'm like begging my higher power to just give me a sign that my dad's around or something. And I had the strongest feeling that my dad was there running with me. So in my addictive mind, I'm thinking, okay, I need to be physically broke down. I need to be emotionally broke down. So I went from running like 5Ks and that to becoming an ultramarathoner. I ran 13 ultramarathons, not because I love running, but because I wanted to feel my dad again. I never did in that way. But something I learned along the way was when you do hard things on purpose, I call it pain on purpose with a purpose, you find out amazing things about yourself. You find out just what you're capable of doing. Like they said in the opening, it's like the bank can take your car, your husband or wife can leave, people can die. I wanted to do something that the bank couldn't take. And that was showing up to the gym. Originally, I just trained outside, like a Navy SEAL a lot of the time. But the more I did hard things, the easier things became, the more I could handle life, and the more important it came for me to give back to my community. And in that time, somehow they called me and wanted me to be the head wrestling coach at a junior high in Bountiful. 11 years later, they asked me to be the head coach of the high school. And every time I walked into one of those rooms, all I had to give was my experience and holding people accountable to what they're truly capable of. I don't care if it's volleyball, I don't care if it's wrestling. I wanted them to love themselves, do hard work, see that failure is a part of the process, and if you don't push yourself to those limits, fear, anxiety, doubt, shame, all those things can build up stronger than anything else. So got to the point where I just committed to the kids, and I was actually training people for free at elementary schools, and it got to a point where I was like, you know what, I need to face that fear of being able to lose something, so I started a company called Empower Fitness and Wellness, where we've been operating for the last 15 years in mental health first, community, and then fitness. I don't care about your back squat. I don't care how fast you can run. I just care that you're around people that are going to hold you up when you're down, a place you can show up and take care of other people. So when she reached out for me to share this, I could go on for hours and hours, and I'm super passionate about this. I'm just grateful to be here with these amazing speakers and you guys showing up for us. So we're Empower Fitness, mental health, suicide prevention, and I will leave some of my information, but when you move your body, amazing and magical things can happen. So thank you guys.
So you really could do a mic drop right now and we'd be done. Well, I really appreciate everything you shared. One of the things I really love about where we're at right now in the field of mental health is that we're talking about it more, and people are willing to actually share their personal experiences and kind of the journey they've been through in their life. So in my office, one of the things that we talk about very frequently, and I bring up right away, is that there is, up here. Gosh dang, I got to eat this thing. Okay, all right, so hopefully you're hearing me better. So a couple things. One of the things that I start off with is more of a philosophical perspective, and that is that life is perfectly balanced. And we got to remember that that is the goal of what we're trying to accomplish, is balance. Now, the way I kind of set this up with individuals who are coming in is I talk to them a little bit about looking at kind of the evidence that supports this. If you look at the poles of the earth, if you look at the ends of a magnet, if you break you down to your simplest form, your protons, neutrons, electrons, this emphasizes this need for balance. And the reason why it's really exciting to actually be talking about this in particular today is that we are talking about the balance between physical and mental health and the need for both of these within our lives. Now, a lot of times what happens, and you can kind of attest to this, is that when one's out of balance, one tends to suffer. And so the goal is that we need to be actually moving towards the direction of trying to create balance between the two. Now, for decades, we've had research that supports the idea that when we see mental health such as depression and anxiety surface within an individual, and when they struggle with that, the immune system actually drops. So they are actually more susceptible to catching the cold and catching the flu and so forth. But the reverse also plays out as well. When we're actually not doing well or physically, when we're ill physically, we're actually more susceptible to things like depression and anxiety. So the need is there, but the question I'd ask to each of you and anybody listening is the bottom line is, are you creating the balance? What I think's very interesting is we've had this information for years, for decades. Magazines are printed on it every single year on exercise, diet, sleep, and your social life, and how important and critical these things are. But how often are we making these things a priority within our lives? When these are out of balance, this is where mental health tends to stem, and if we can create that, we're going to see a better results. So you think about how much time you're spending in your job, how much energy, how much effort you place in your job, and what is the result? What are we getting from that? Now, we can go into a lot of different things if you've got jobs that actually are a little more fulfilling, but the bottom lines are for paychecks. But think about how much time and energy you place into that. Now, think about, are you placing that amount of time and energy into you, into taking care of yourself? The things that we neglect are the basics, and it's kind of funny because I laugh because we have needed research to tell us the things that we need to do that are healthy that we did as a kid. You mentioned playing sports. You mentioned playing, running around. It's funny because the 4 pillars of mental health are exercise, diet, sleep, and socialization. Guess what you do as a kid? You run, you eat, you sleep, and you are playing with your friends all the time. Now, everybody's probably heard of the term mindfulness. Mindfulness is actually pretty funny because it's also something you did as a kid. Did you ever color in a coloring book? Did you ever play with Legos? Which is actually funny is also that Legos are actually more popular amongst adults today than they are amongst kids. And the reason why is because they are mindfulness-based activity. They're centering you. They're putting you in the present. So when we're talking about these things, it's important to recognize, like, you have a lot of this information within you if you'll just tap into it. I've always emphasized the fact that the bottom line is your health isn't complicated. It's never complicated. It's the most simplistic thing if you'll pay attention to it. You just need to know about it. Sorry, I'm very animated. This is really hard to hold this because I like to talk with my hands. So when Brandy actually asked me to come and speak, because I know we have a limited time, I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing what she wanted me to talk about, which is, and I'm going to ask you guys, I know that this isn't, I don't know if you guys are on TV or not or whatever, but how many of you guys have actually heard of the term diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing? Okay, good. Most people have. Now, here's what comes into my office is that I'll ask them that question. I'll say, how many of you guys are aware of diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing? And they'll say, oh, yeah. But when they go to show me their knowledge of it, they're not doing it properly, and it's really basic. But I don't think people are being taught this basic aspect of belly breathing. So I want to really quickly give you the nutshell version of exactly how the science works behind belly breathing. You have two parts of your brain that you really, when it comes to mental health, are key factors. You have the prefrontal cortex and your limbic system. The limbic system is your emotional brain. And anytime you're anxious, you're sad, you're depressed, you're overly excited, that's where you're at. Now, you actually have total control over that limbic system. And it's done through breathing. Because you have a nerve that runs from your brain down to the diaphragm. The diaphragm sits right here. And anytime you do belly breathing properly, that nerve is like the diaphragm will actually flex downward, the nerve is actually tugged, and it will send signals to the brain to actually calm down the limbic system. And that's a really, really cool thing, mainly because there's not a whole lot of things in life we can say are 100%, but this is 100% because it's just basic biology. So I'm going to, with the time we have, I just want to demonstrate to you so you kind of understand it. But what I really want to emphasize is that we are way more in control of our mental health than we think. And the balance between your mental and your physical health become key. One last thing before I demonstrate this is that to understand the difference, or I should say the correlation between the two, there's a book out called Spark. It's by John J. Rady. And he has an example in there where he actually talks about a PE teacher who actually set aside this program called 0 Hour. What it was that kids could actually come in an hour before school, and they can engage in any kind of physical activity. So any kind of sports, running, any kind of high-intensity activities. What he was finding, what the school was finding, is every kid involved in the 0 hour, their test scores were going up. And they were going up in the STEM subjects, so science and math. And they were also starting to compete on the international level in these, which was phenomenal. And Congress actually started getting attention. But what it says is it talks about the correlation between your physical well-being and your cognitive function, even on that basic level with children. So I'm going to probably have you hold the mic if that's okay, or you. Do you want to? So I can actually explain exactly how this works real quick. So the bottom line is that I usually have people when they come in and talk to me, yeah, let me eat it. So you can use your hands as biofeedback, but the bottom line is your chest and your stomach, and you want to take a chest breath first, which is, and I ask them what moves. And you can see the chest rises and falls, their shoulders will rise and fall. But if I belly breathe, it'll look like this. I'm going to sit down. So you can kind of see the difference. My chest doesn't move, my belly does. And a lot of people don't understand why. What's happening is the diaphragm is actually flexing downward, which means the lungs can just drop. They fill up more, they get about 10% more oxygen in this way. But the key factor here is that nerve is getting tugged, which means you're shifting. You're shifting from your limbic system into your prefrontal cortex. Why this is so important is because you cannot do any kind of problem solving in your limbic system. It is your crisis brain. It is your emotional brain. It's the survival brain, a lot of people call it. And when people are there, this is when they're in crisis. This is when people are thinking things they normally rationally wouldn't think about. So when we talked about things like you don't want to be here anymore, you don't want to live, the bottom line is in a rational brain, you're not going to go there. Your limbic system will, however. And so getting better control over your breathing and knowing how to actually control your brain through it is critical. So that's the key, is you can do this, and it's really quick, very short synopsis. But I'm going to show you a cheat really quick. I'm over by 40 seconds now, 41, 42. Okay, so I'm going to show you a cheat, and hopefully it'll help you get at least started. But the bottom line is that if you can get this going, that nerve, it's an on and off switch. It's like flicking a light switch. Once it's activated, you're shifting from that limbic system into the prefrontal cortex so you can think more clearly and actually start doing cognitive processing better. So the cheat is basically, you can sit on the edge of a chair, let gravity do its job, and you'll see this is emphasized a little bit more. But if you tuck your hands behind your back, what this does is it restricts the rib cage, so it pulls it back so it's harder to do an actual chest breath. And then you can do it as your kid and say, look, I'm pregnant. You know when you do it as a kid? We all did that. I know everybody did that. So if you watch, the belly will go out, and you can see the emphasis of this. So it'll be, okay. You don't have to always do this, but what it does, thank you. You're awesome. Can't over my 1 minute, dang it. Okay, I'm done. But I can answer any questions afterwards. But the bottom line is, like, I really want to emphasize the balance between your mind and your body, your mental health and your physical health is critical. You have to create a balance between the two. Also, that you are way more in control of your well-being than you think, and it's not complicated. It's simple applications that work, and if you put them into practice and just, again, think about being a kid, they'll work, and they'll work for you. So there's more built within us than we think, and we just need to have that faith and trust in it. So thanks for listening to me. Thanks for the patience in going over, and I'll pass the mic. Oh, we have one.
Okay, I do have slides, so hopefully I can. Oh, good. Okay, so I know it was said we're talking about diet. Oh, first of all, like they said, I'm Andrea Beckstrom, and I'm the medical director at LEVO, and we do medication management for mental health, and it's my favorite thing ever. I love my job and love helping people find resources, so I'm grateful we can be here and that Promise to Live does these meetings so that we can bring awareness and, like they said, give people resources to find the help, you know, when you have an issue. So like it was said, movement and exercise has such a huge role in our mental health, and so I'm very passionate about that piece and also the nutrition piece. I teach patients a lot about that. And so I'm excited I'll bring exercise in kind of at the end, but I'm going to do a deep dive on the nutrition piece. This is my family, and hopefully I can talk about them. I sent my 4 girls to school today, so I'm feeling a little bittersweet and tender today. But from a picture, you know, it looks like everything's going well in that picture, that we've got it all together, but really that was one of the hardest times I can think back on. I was going through multiple late loss miscarriages, and one of my daughters was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that turned our world upside down for a minute. She's good, but it was scary and difficult. And so when I was at such a low point, I knew I needed help, and I knew I did want to do therapy. And funny enough, I didn't want to jump to meds right away. Which would have been good for me at the time, but I wanted to do something I could start doing on my own that was research-based and had effectiveness. So one thing, even though I had been a psych nurse practitioner for almost a decade, I wanted to do a deep dive and didn't understand yet the importance of nutrition with mental health. I had always been interested in nutrition. I almost did that as my major in school because I am passionate about it, but I didn't realize how big of an impact it can have on our mental health. So that is one of the pieces of the puzzle. It's not the thing that will take away everything. Often there's several pieces needed to get well and to get mentally sound, but it's one of the pieces. And I love this quote, "You are the greatest project you will ever work on. Take your time." It takes time. I mean, this was years ago, and I'm still working on it. You know, I still want to learn more, do better, and it's not a quick fix. And that's what I like, though. It's little changes that we can do that have a big impact if we keep working on them. And so I'm going to go back to that other slide. So diet quality has so many studies on being a key mechanism in helping reduce depression, anxiety, and all disorders in mental health, ADHD, you name it, it helps. So some of those factors, as you can see up there, are a nourishing diet. I don't like to use the word healthy just because I also had a history in junior high of having an eating disorder, And so I watch that really carefully of how we talk about food in our home. So I don't say healthy or not healthy. I don't say good and bad foods. All food is welcome. And so just nourishing is a good word that I like. And phytochemicals are a big part. Those are things that you get from, you hear this all the time, leafy green, vegetables, and they just are irreplaceable to help in our mental health. And color is good, so it's good to stick with eating all colors of the rainbow. Vitamins and minerals. I know there's so many supplements out there, that they sell and it gets overwhelming. What do I need? But really sticking to getting them from the source, meaning from the fruits and vegetables and nuts and those kinds of things, that is the best way. And supplements have a place as well, but it's better from the real food, not always a pill. Omega-3 fatty acids are huge. I love telling people and teaching that I like to think of it because you hear of that all the time, but it's like miracle grow for the brain. It will help decrease inflammation. It just helps your mood boost. It is so protective for our brain. So fish is hard for a lot of people to eat 2 to 3 times a week. So a fish oil supplement is amazing at bed so you don't get side effects of burps. Just have to say that because for a while I would take them and I couldn't do it. Yeah, take it at night. And then fiber is just good for our microbiota. It helps, increase the production of all those neurotransmitters, which we need. So, we hear all the time we need vitamin D, omega-3s, and more vegetables. And it can be hard to eat nourishing things, right? We live in a fast-paced world. There's so many processed things that are available. So I love talking about the why behind it because that helps us to be motivated, or it helps me to be motivated in doing it. So vitamin D, we probably all think we have enough because it's been summer here in Utah and we're outside, but really 42% of Utahns and most people are low in vitamin D deficient. We are up high in elevation, so we don't absorb it as well, so we need a supplement. So this is, drink milk, sure, but a supplement is often needed with almost all of my patients. And that also helps in the synthesis of serotonin. And then omega-3s, you're like, how do I get that besides fish? You can throw some chia seeds in a smoothie or in yogurt. There's lots of ways just to throw a little tablespoon on. Nuts are really good. And then B9 is important in edamame, the leafy greens, things like that. And that helps in producing all of our neurotransmitters that boost our mood. Norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. So just if that's not enough, why? Get more vegetables. You can cut them up and hide them in things. I put them in spaghetti the other day. Just find ways to, it doesn't always have to be a salad or a hard, fancy vegetable. There's easy ways to do it. So why this is important is because in our gut, we hold 95% of our serotonin neurotransmitters, and 50% of dopamine is synthesized in our gut. So everyone thinks of focusing on the brain all the time, but really the connection to our gut is so important. And before deep diving into all this, I would make fun of gut health. I just thought it was another health hoax and a quick fix, but it really is so important. And we can reap great benefits. So focusing on interventions. So, seeing a problem, and intervention is seeing something that's wrong and then making a change and making something better and changing the outcome. So not focusing on weight. Society and even a lot of practitioners are so focused on losing weight and being the right weight, but I like to focus on, that is a buzzword, healthy habits, but just good habits that will boost our mood. And some of those can be setting out your exercise clothes. You get home from work, you're tired, but having them right there, you see them, you can change into them. Walk 10 minutes away from your house and 10 minutes back. A lot of my patients aren't in a place where they can even work out. They just aren't. They don't feel good. That's why they're sitting on the couch in my office. And so I just say, what is something small you can do? Can they do 5 minutes? Sure. Can they take the stairs once? Everything helps. I tell them to park in the farthest parking spot, in the parking lot, because everything helps. Learn new active hobbies. I love this because I used to think running was the only activity to help me have a boost, but there's it can be anything. And I encourage everyone, you know, if you have grandkids or kids, go out with them and go shoot hoops, go jump on the tramp if you can handle that. And, you know, there's ways to get them excited about it, and that will improve their mental health and your own. And then education is key, just continuing to learn, find out the why behind why we need a supplement or, you know, to eat more fruits and veggies and what it can do. Just the nutrient density is key. And circling back to me feeling so terrible those years ago, I have noticed a huge difference because we have made changes. So I encourage all of you to pick one thing, if it be taking a vitamin D supplement or even having your vitamin D drawn by a practitioner. I had a patient that was sleeping 12 hours a day, felt terrible. Yes, we did adjust some medication, but her vitamin D was in the pot, and we got her on a supplement, and she's doing so much better. She says her life is changed. Not just because of that, but it's a piece, you know? So just pick one thing that's easy. If you want to cook with a little more olive oil that has those omega-3s, do that. I still use butter, but I use olive oil too. Another thing I like to say is cut the apple. I just don't leave the fruits and veggies in your fridge needing to be cut, because who's motivated at night to do that, right? You just want a quick, I like cereal, so I will, but I try to not always just grab that at night to spike my blood sugar. So cut the apple, cut the veggies, and then they're right there, and kids will eat more of them, and it fills them up with the goodness. And then they can have all the fun stuff and the treats at school. You know, you don't cut out things, or I don't. Everything has a place, but hopefully some of this can help you guys to incorporate something to help you and or someone you love, you know, to their mental health. So thanks.
Brandon has the coolest shoes, by the way.
Oh, thanks, Brandon. You should have worn yours as well, right? Let's see. I think I've got. Do I have slides up here? Did you send me slides? I did. Okay. Well, I'll do it without the slides then. Okay. So my name is Brent Espelin. I'm the executive director of Oasis. It's an adolescent residential treatment program here in Utah, and I'm super passionate about mental health, and I certainly appreciate Promise to Live, Silicon Slopes, for putting on these town halls. They're super valuable for creating awareness. So my slides, we're going to show some pictures of kind of taking me down memory lane. I'm just going to tell you a little story and then talk about some skills. So about 25 years ago, I was in graduate school in Wichita, Kansas, studying to become a marriage and family therapist. My wife and I were there. My wife was working as a CPA at a large accounting firm in Wichita. And we became pregnant with our first child. And immediately, my wife, Julie, became super sick. She was throwing up multiple times a day, not just for the first trimester, but for all 9 months. And so here I'm in graduate school, and I'm working at the same time, probably working about 16 hours a day, and I'm gone all the time. And she's there and super sick, and like I said, throwing up all the time. What I didn't know is what else was going on with her at that period of time. So to give you just a little picture of what my wife is like, my wife, Julie, she's actually here with us. She is the most mentally tough person I know. And there's a reason why I'm describing this to you. So she's an elite marathon runner, run track and cross country at BYU. And her fastest marathon, anybody here ever run a marathon before? Okay. Her fastest marathon is 2:50. Is that fast, Curtis? Yeah, 2:50 at the time was 2 minutes shy of qualifying for the Olympic trials, okay? I propose it takes a high level of mental toughness to run a marathon, okay? In addition to that, she even at maybe a higher level of let's say toughness, or I'm not sure what it is, but she also got into, her brother got her into doing Spartan races. Anybody here ever done a Spartan before? Those are just a little bit, maybe even more insane, right? And takes, once again, high levels of mental toughness to do that, okay? So, I tell you that because I think it's important to understand that everybody has struggles that we face, and so fast forward many years to 2011. I helped start the Provo Canyon Behavioral Hospital, a psychiatric hospital here in Utah County. It's now called Aspen Grove. And part of my responsibilities there at the Behavioral Hospital was to go out in the community, like here today, talk to high schools, universities about suicide awareness and prevention. And one evening I was in our home office preparing one of these presentations, And my wife, Julie, says to me, Brent, you know I was like really struggling, all those many years ago when we had our first son with throwing up and being so sick. But what I didn't really explain to you completely was that I was struggling also with suicidal thoughts. And so she started to describe to me that in Wichita, Kansas, you drive down this main thorough road that's like all on stilts, kind of a long overpass. And she said there were times, Brent, where my thoughts would go to, hey, if I just turned my car off the road here and crashed, I'd end all the physical and mental pain that I'm experiencing. And then she'd be like, no, I don't want to think that way. I don't want to think that way. So then she decided she's going to drive the country roads, the further around to get to work. And eventually she saw these large trees on the side of the road and thought, you know what? If I turn my car into these trees, I'll end all the physical and mental pain that I'm experiencing. And she's like, once again, I don't want to think that way. And so she's going through these things going through her mind. And this is like literally like 15, 17 years later that she's telling me this, right? And here I'm thinking to myself, I was in graduate school working with individuals, families, and couples, trying to help them with severe anxiety and depression. And the person that I loved and cared about the most was suffering. And I wasn't even completely aware of it. And so what I want to emphasize today is the importance of us being able to be aware that of those around us, like it's already been said, all of us are touched by mental health issues, whether it's ourselves individually, the people, our family, the people that we love and care about the most, neighbors, friends, all of us are touched by mental health issues. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that and to be able to create more awareness. I would propose that over the last 25 years, we've come a long way with removing stigma related to mental health issues. More and more people talk about, I go see a therapist. I'm working on myself, right? I'm working on my own mental health, and that's super important. So one of the things I wish I knew then that I know now relates to dialectical behavioral therapy. Anybody ever heard of DBT before? Love it, okay? Anybody practice DBT in their lives? I hope so, right? Because I certainly do. Okay, DBT is something we teach our students at Oasis on a daily basis, our students and our families. I've actually got some cards here that I have, that my wife has here. I'd like to give you all cards, little flashcards that we give to all of our staff and our students and our parents to help them to remember what DBT skills are. One DBT skill specifically that I like is called TIP. Okay, TIP stands for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and paired muscle relaxation. All right, so temperature. Anybody here ever done a cold plunge before? That's kind of a trendy thing right now, right? Brandon was talking about engaging that vagal nerve that we have. That's what cold plunging does. Now, you don't have to actually go dip in the Provo River like my wife and I do sometimes, right? But what you can do, and what we do with our students, is we actually have them get a bag of ice, put it on the back of their neck, and that can help them get grounded. That can help to stimulate that nerve that we have, right? It's about being able to help individuals to get grounded and to be able to be able to connect with the DBT, connecting your emotional mind and your rational mind, and where they connect in the middle is called your wise mind, okay? So intense exercise, we've talked about here in the panel how important exercise is. So important to be able to help ourselves with not just our physical health, but our mental health as well. Paced breathing. Brandon was talking about his breathing exercise, which is super important, once again, to be able to connect to that nerve in our body to help us to be able to feel more grounded and to be able to feel more focused. And it helps us with our mental health and can help specifically with anxiety and depression. And then the last one is paired muscle relaxation. Anybody can do this, even as you're sitting, anywhere you are. You can go through and scan your body, and you can tighten up just different parts of your muscles. Oftentimes, people carry stress in their jaw, in their shoulders. That's the main part. But you can tense up those muscles and then release them, and do that in a methodical way to help and just go scan through your whole body. Sometimes we'll teach students and even myself to do that at night when I'm really stressed about things, that I'll scan through my body, even laying in bed, and that can help me to be able to calm my mind. So my hope is, and I have several other DBT skills that are on these cards. I'm happy to, my wife here in the pink, she's happy to give you one of those cards as we finish up here today. And I hope that we can utilize skills, each of us individually, and then also teach these skills to others around us, because they really do work. And I've used them myself, and I appreciate the fact that we're creating, once again, more awareness for mental and physical health, because the two of those go hand in hand. So thank you.
So what do you think? So I have a question for you. Well, first let's do this. Thank you. I really do appreciate it for each of you. Let's see if I can get this right. Rob, Brandon, Andrea. Brent! I was going to say Brett, so I need more breathing. Okay, so questions for these four wonderful people. Well, that's not true. Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned that we don't absorb as much vitamin D because we're at a high altitude, but I've not heard of that before. It was mentioned that we don't absorb as much vitamin D because of the high altitude.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that before, and I'm curious.
Yeah,
to hear
I
more
don't
about
have
that.
the study off the top of my head, but I can find that for you because, yeah, Utahns are more prone to be more deficient. So I will get that to you. I wish I had it off the top of my head, but
Thank you.
yeah, you bet.
Other questions? Okay,
I got it. Crawford.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Mainly, I would just like a little more instruction on how to do your breathing.
So the key thing is a lot of times people, it can be, with DBT, it's a little more intense for a reason. But the biggest thing, and the reason why people come in and don't really understand it, is it's not complicated. It really is just about the belly. So the biggest thing you've got to pay attention to is the reason why I say use your hands is they're kind of like biofeedback for a minute. So you can put them on your hand, on your stomach, or on your chest, and on your stomach. And what you're doing is basically, it's not a hard breathe, like you're inhaling it as hard as you can and pushing your stomach out as hard as you can. You're just extending that stomach. And the reason why I joke about, like, look, I'm pregnant, as you did as a kid, is that literally that is what you're doing. Is you're just kind of intentionally pushing the stomach out as you inhale. And as you exhale, you're just doing a normal exhale. Just let the air out. And every time you just try to focus more on the belly. And the reason why the cheat works is because of the restriction of the rib cage. And once you're used to it, it comes very natural because you'll feel it. Like once that nerve gets activated, your body starts to relax because you're working on one of two things. You've got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Once that parasympathetic kicks in, you're in a relaxed state. I have another book in my office that's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's by Robert Zapolsky. He's actually he's a Stanford neurobiologist, but very comical in his writing. But basically what he says when zebras are being chased on the savannah by a lion to be killed, they're in their sympathetic response, which means their muscles tighten up, their heart rate goes up, their breathing becomes shallow, which is what we do when we become anxious and a lot of times with other emotions. He said, but once the lion's done pursuing it, it goes right back to grazing. So it shifts into that parasympathetic response. And that's what the breathing is doing for you. It's like when you tuck your hands behind, it's to help make it harder to breathe with your chest so you can feel that sensation in your stomach. And it takes a minute because most people aren't used to doing this. When you're functioning day to day, you're typically in your chest because you're moving, you're active, and so forth. And when you sleep, you're actually doing belly breathing. So you need to kind of practice. I always say you don't wait to become stressed or emotional to practice this. Do it when you're not, because you'll pick it up pretty quick. And then once you've got that down, you'll use it all over the place. If you look at performers, singers, and so forth, they use this a lot. Because if you think about someone who's got to memorize lines, that's all held up in their prefrontal cortex. And so if they don't have access to it, then that's a problem. Test anxiety. When you think about test anxiety, you've shifted in your limbic system. I always tell people, I say, if you've ever had the experience after you've taken a test, you're like 10 or 15 minutes after you've left the testing center, you're kind of like, oh crap, that was the answer to that question and that question. And the reason why is because when you're stressed, you don't really have access to a lot of the information you've studied. So you have to practice it when you're not stressed. It works really well, helps you sleep, helps you control your anger. There's a lot of benefits to it. But does that kind of answer your question? It's a long, very
So Brandon,
yes.
could you actually guide this group through a belly breath?
Yeah.
Could you do it?
Yeah.
How many people would like to actually know if you did it? We're not all going to get in line and have you watch us. But it seems like we should have some fun with this, right?
Yeah, we could do that.
So if Rob will hold your mic and can you pull your chair out here so we can really see you pregnant, okay? And
Is it easier to stand and do this?
It'll be harder to see. It might
Okay. You all want to do this, right? And if you don't, like, turn around so we know that you are not participating. Okay?
So the biggest thing is like you could actually, because I'm not going to be able to give anybody feedback, you could actually, if you paired up and watched each other, you'll be able to tell. So just so you kind of pay attention, you're just watching, I'll just do a chest breath first, so you kind of watch how that works. It's just...
A little closer with the mic.
Okay, chest breath is first. So obviously I'm emphasizing it. So the chest is going to rise and fall, the shoulders are going to rise and fall. But if I belly breathe, it's going to look like this. You're going to just, it's a very easy, you just got to focus on it. Don't worry about getting it down the first time. So, okay, so anybody can answer this question. Does my chest move?
No.
Okay, so the reason why, again, I think I'd explain this and we were talking about it, is that diaphragm is shifting downward, which means the lungs just drop. So it allows for more room. It allows that nerve to be tugged on. And the bottom line is that usually, and we could even take, I don't know if we have time, but 60 seconds for you just to close your eyes and just pay attention to your breathing, because it really takes a minute for you to get used to the sensation. And honestly, it takes practice. Because I'll send people home and I'll say, look, you need to practice this 2 to 3 times a day for at least a week, just to get used to the sensation. You'll pick it up very quickly, but you can find 60 seconds anywhere in a day. You can go lock yourself in the bathroom for a minute and say, hey, I'm busy. And you can find that time. So basically, that's all you're doing, and it doesn't need to be complicated. I think a lot of times people get caught up in the nuances of like breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, hold your breath for this many seconds, and breathe out for this many seconds. And those have application in certain settings, but if you're just trying to shift that brain and shift yourself out of that limbic system, it's just about that nerve. So that it really is just about the pushing out of the stomach. And nobody wants to do this because everybody likes actually sucking in their stomach more than anything. So the other thing too, and I can just say this right here, is that if you're doing the cheat, and I say this because mainly the cheat's only to get you used to the sensation, is that you're just basically sitting at the edge of the chair and letting gravity kind of pull on your stomach while your arms are tucked behind you. So it's just basically going to be. So can you see how more emphasized that is and how much easier it is to see the stomach moving? And it's a lot harder. You'll breathe in your chest if you actually attempted to, but the body is like going, okay, we need to do it the other way. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, now we're going to do it, right?
Yeah. So we're going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys, and you can do it however you want. You can sit in your chair, and I'll try to walk around and like pay attention, but close your eyes so you can focus on your breathing. And I'll walk around and just kind of pay attention to your belly and give you some feedback. But 60 seconds, we could probably, I can just do it on my thing. So, and we'll just give you that time, and then we'll go from there.
You want to hold this?
Sure.
Okay. So, now we're going to do this like, ready?
Yes.
And then you're going to tell us what to do, right? So
Okay.
no more explaining.
No more.
Explaining, no nothing.
Mansplaining?
Like,
Is that what that was?
Okay.
Okay, all right, ready? Get started, guys. Guys, our eyes aren't closed.
Tell us what to do.
Okay, just relax. And close your eyes just so you're not being distracted by anything around you. And just pay attention to your breathing and pay attention to your hands. And don't worry about getting it down on the first go. Just every time you exhale, just try to relax. And when you inhale, just try to use your stomach a little bit more than last time. And I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds to just be quiet. Okay. Okay, so anybody want to share?
So, one question, and maybe I just missed this. But do you do a chest and then a stomach, chest, stomach, or do you do a couple chest and then a stomach?
So initially, I'll tell people just to allow themselves to do a deep chest breath because that's what's normal, natural. But once you start getting into the belly, it's just in the belly. You don't need to shift back to your chest. You do that normally when you're active. But right now, it's just about activating that nerve and allowing yourself to kind of feel that sensation of what it feels like for your body to relax. You mentioned PMR, or I used to call it progressive muscle relaxation, but it's very similar to that. Like you're tensing up the muscles on purpose so that when you let go, you're able to relax and it comes down below where it was before. With the breathing, you're just allowing your body to kind of get used to that sensation of being relaxed. And like I said, if you've ever watched a baby sleep, if you remember when they're laying on their back, their little bellies are like balloons. They just kind of rise and fall and rise and fall. And that's because they're doing belly breathing because they're relaxed and they haven't learned how to be stressed yet. So it's a wonderful thing. I wish we all keep it. But the bottom line is you do the same thing when you sleep. It's just that you're not used to consciously doing it. And this is just trying to get you to consciously actually use the belly to breathe. The thing is that, and I just want to emphasize why this becomes so important and learning it becomes so important, is because when people come into my office, it's hard to do cognitive work if you're too stressed, if you're too emotional, because your brain is just not able to process it at the efficiency level it can when you're relaxed. And so that's the same when you're not in, say, an office. It's enabling you to actually process things better. You use coping skills better. And the one thing I'm always emphasizing with people is that you have so many answers within you that you're not trusting, and your confidence isn't there, and so therefore you're not accessing it. And then maybe just take one more metaphor that I use with people is like I usually talk to people about how fast the brain functions. The firing of the neurons within our brains it's instantaneous. And so what happens is that we think that all the solutions should be at that speed. So if they're not on the surface of our plane of view within our cognitive abilities, we bypass everything. And the metaphor I'm usually using is a boat. If you ever look, it's not the best metaphor, but it works. So if you look at a boat and you think that boat at full throttle, how much of the surface area of that boat is touching the water? Very little, right? That's the brain. If you look at the water as information and knowledge that you have available to you, and the boat is your brain. The basic premise there is that if you're at full throttle, which is you just thinking that it's all going to be on the surface, and if you can't think of it there, it's not there, that's you at full throttle. Very little surface area is touching. But if you slow the boat down, you think about how the boat dips into the water and all that surface area is touching the boat now. That's information that's available to you. And you have to slow the brain down to have access to that information. And so this is just having better control, one, over your brain's functioning and then your body, but then also getting into the proper area of your brain so that you can access the information that you actually have a lot of answers in. So it's just going to take practice and getting used to it, because usually people don't pick it up right away.
And there are tons of videos on YouTube about it. Put that in there, or prana breathing, or anything. Watch 100 people demonstrate for you every day.
So Mary said there's videos on YouTube on this. Just because you didn't get a mic, because everything you say we need to hear. So thank you. Any more questions? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I appreciate the hands-onness of the breathing exercise. Also, it's one practice, I'm assuming, and the principle behind it is stimulating the nerve and getting your brain to relax, right? So you've both talked about the temperature thing, right? The getting yourself cold stimulates a similar nerve, the same nerve. I'm not quite sure how to think about that. But my question is, breathing seems like a very accessible, easy exercise. Is it the best, most effective exercise? Or if I know someone who's really struggling, panicking, really needs to calm down, and breathing's not doing it for them, what is another practice that I could use to help with that same effect?
Well, I mean, I was just mentioning, yes, those other ideas of like, once again, scanning through your body and locating areas, of your muscles that might be tense. I mean, just another quick thing would be, has anybody here heard of bilateral stimulation before? Bilateral stimulation is what happens when we walk. When we run, we're connecting the two hemispheres of our brain. EMDR is about bilateral stimulation, and it's done through lights, it's done through tapping. So creating bilateral stimulation for people is really a super effective way to also help them to get calm, right? I mean, that's when we talk about exercise here, whether it's walking or running or anything that's creating movement for you, that's going to create bilateral stimulation, and that creates a calmness in your brain. So with the kids we work with, we are all about movement. And whether that's, movement playing basketball, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's just running around doing different exercises, that's a key element. And then back to the temperature thing, like I mentioned before, like there's things you can do without having to get into a cold plunge in a tub. People have talked about too the fact that like just turning your shower cold at the end for like 30 seconds. I personally hate it. I would actually rather sit in the Provo River than turn my shower from hot to cold. That's just my own preference, right? And yet that's something you can do as well, just once again to help you to get grounded, and it does work, and it does take practice for sure.
And on that, I love how you said movement, because at LEVO, one thing we say is move the chemical, because when you get anxious, you have your amygdala's, very activated, and you have noradrenaline, which is noradrenaline pumping through you, and a lot of people want to freeze and not do the breathing and not do the moving. They just want to feel better. So yeah, move it through, get that, noradrenaline out, and you can feel so much calmer and so much better. So we say move the chemical. We like to remind people that.
So a couple more things. These are things. Breathing can sometimes be hard in the moment. Even that, it is the most accessible. But if I'm trying to help an individual trying to get them back in that prefrontal cortex, trying to get them out of that limbic response, there are other things that may not necessarily be as effective but can work in the moment. So I'll have people, laughter is a way in which people can actually stimulate that nerve. So you've heard of nervous laughter, right? That's why people laugh. Why nervous? Because it's their body going, like, there's so much tension being built up, they've got to have an outlet. So their body will almost automatically do something for it. So it's that nervous laughter. So laughter is a really good source of being able to activate that nerve. It's not quite as effective, but it works. On a more cognitive strategy, I will have people say, like, do math. And it can be the basic math, 1 + 1, 2 + 2, 3 + 3. The reason why is because it requires the prefrontal cortex. Does that make sense? And when people do it, they'll find that they'll actually start getting out of that anxious response. So there are little things that you can do that may be a little more accessible if the breathing technique isn't working necessarily, or if they don't have access to, like, taking a shower, cold shower, polar plunge, ice, things of that nature. So these are just little tricks. The breathing tends to be the most effective, mainly because you are working on that diaphragm. So hopefully that helps.
Those were all great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions. I'm getting a signal that our time on film and tape is over. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to wrap up, and then we'll turn off the video. And then if any of you have questions, we'll see if there's any more. But we're going to wrap this up. And so I'd just like to end by thanking you, Brent, and Andrea, and Brandon, and Rob. And I took a deep breath so I could remember. And just endorse, like, what we've heard today. And I don't have a ton of time to tell my story or the story of our family, but I will just say that amongst all these resources that we heard, when my daughter, who was on suicide watch for a number of years, had to kind of find her way, DBT saved her life. These tools saved her life. The breathing saved her life. Getting connected with her body saved her life. Changing her nourishing diet, I almost said healthy, but I got you, right? It saved her life. And so instead of losing her at 15, I have her in my life at 19, or 29, sorry. My math wasn't so good either. Another deep breath. You know why I don't do it? Is because I was taught to hold my stomach in, right? So anyway, we're so grateful you're here. We know that mental health is a real thing, and that there's just a degree, if it's not you, there's just one degree between you and somebody you love who has a mental health challenge. And if you don't or haven't, you may. And that's not a wish or a prediction. It's just that this is what happens in life. And so we want to get really clear about being active in this, and being aware and connected. And honestly, it's a scary thing to say, I suppose, but I am so grateful that my daughter had the experience she did so that I could learn to pay attention and to listen and to get connected and to take care of each of my children and grandchildren and know that these things can go on in their thinking and to say, okay, there's another way to go at this, so let's go at it. Let's not be passive or think, oh, because I went to church or whatever it is you do, then it's not in my family, which was me, right? And so I invite you to join me in this fight, this battle, this initiative, this vision to take all of the stigma out of suicide conversation, mental health distancing, and let's get in the conversation. I invite you to make the promise for yourself. And I'll tell you one thing my daughter said, which I thought was so important, as I got her comfortable with this. She said, Dad, always remember that the promise is not for you, meaning I didn't make the promise for you. I made the promise for me because I know that I have the power and the resource inside of me to handle everything that's been given to me. And I have to make the promise to go get it when I don't think I can. So I invite you to make the promise, ask everybody you love, go to your family, join me, and we'll end with that. Thank you to Silicon Slopes, LEVO for your sponsorship. Am I supposed to look some? Oh, I've got to tell them about this. So on September 10th, one of the things that Promise to Live does is we do a live stream event, and it'll start at 8 p.m. Utah time, 7 o'clock in California, where we're holding this in the historic Avalon Theater. And you can stream it on promisetolive.org. It's going to be a great event. Last year we reached somewhere around 400 to 500,000 people, right? This year we expect to get to about 1.5 million people. If you'd like to stream it on your own site or in other ways, then you can talk to Sean. Raise your hand, Sean, the handsome one. And we would like you to join us. Let's continue to destigmatize this conversation, and let's save lives. And our goal is to save lives. And I'm going to end it with this, is what I tell all of my children, and my daughter particularly. My life is better with you in it than not in it, so stay. So that's my invitation to you, and thank you for being here. Thank you.